Executive Officer, Sam Gutman.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today for a voyage into the future. Today, I'm excited to take you on a journey through the history of data and how it is changing the way we drive innovation and drive our businesses forward. First, I have the pleasure of introducing two speakers who are at the forefront of data and what it means for humankind. Chris Wiggins and Matt Jones recently published the book, How Data Happened, a history from the age of reason to the age of algorithms. Chris is the chief data scientist at the New York Times and a professor of applied mathematics at Columbia University. Matt is a historian at Princeton. These guys know what they're talking about. Please welcome to the stage Chris Wiggins and Matt Jones.
Thank you, Sam. Good. Thank you, Sam. So as Sam said, today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of data. But today, data rules. We're in a world in which data is on top. You can look at the top companies at the NASDAQ and see that the companies that are driving our political and professional and personal realities are companies that know how to make sense of data and are shaping our world through data. So a natural question to ask is, how did it get this way? Which is a good time to bring on a real historian, Matt.
So the question Chris and I look at in our book is, how is it that we came to value data so much? And then, how is it that data came to make such value? And what do we learn from that history, and where do we go forward?
It's true. So all of us live in a world ruled by data and also ruled by computation, computers, and making sense of data with computers. That world goes back about 75 years, we'll see, and we talk about it in the book quite a bit. But that itself is inheriting a tradition for maybe 200 years of people use data to make sense of the natural world. All of physics and all of science had touched by data for the last 200 years. But really, that builds on a much longer tradition of people trying to collect data and just store data and put it to work for 2,000 years.
Yeah, if we head back 2,000 years to cuneiform tablets like you can go see at the Met Museum uptown, what we see are some of the earliest human records containing exactly the sort of everyday stuff of life. Taxes, tariffs, crop yields, these sorts of things, but also observation of the stars and planets, as well as observations of things like animal entrails. This data, though thousands of years old, remains salient in understanding the development of the solar system and the movement of the stars.
That's right. Looking to the heavens was another way that data really changed the way we thought about reality. So it's true that keeping track of Mesopotamian data will help you understand things on long time scales, but about 200 years ago, people realized that in addition to having fundamental equations and Newton's equations of motion for understanding how the planets move, you could also go measure them, and then you could have hundreds of people measure the location of planets, and then what would you do with all of that big data of, let's say, like 5 or 6 different scientists figuring out where is Jupiter? Well, what you could do is you could combine them some way and build one consensus model. And that really changed the relationship between data and truth, right? It wasn't just mathematical detail. It was actually comparing numbers. It also had this interesting sociological aspect of trying to get different scientists to compare the result and come up with one sort of consensus. So about 200 years ago, I would say data changed the way we understood nature and the universe around us.
So the great success of data and new forms of analysis of it in the sciences led to a group of people, that probably the nerds of yesterday, to think about what if you could apply those same tools for acquiring data and analyzing it to the observation of human beings, of human societies. One guy, a Belgian named Quetelet, invented what he called a social physics. And what he sought in his social physics was to do what scientists like Isaac Newton had done for the stars, but for human beings, to better understand by observing humans in all of their variation, and then to predict in ways that would enable you to think about better policy for the here and now. And this is the famous normal curve, which was famous from scientists. But Quetelet applied it to people, and one of the residues of that is the normal curves we all know, say, from standardized testing, or curves and other sorts of things. They envisioned then the place that data could have in ruling societies, in thinking about societies, in improving societies. But this was an uphill fight.
That's true. Actually, they were the nerds of the day. And the book opens up with the normal curve. The book opens up with us trying to convince students that when you see the normal curve in different situations, you're basically borrowing expertise from a different field and realizing that lessons learned in some totally different community could be brought to bear to advance a new field. Which brings us to an IPO. So a very famous IPO, one of the biggest IPOs of the 19th century was the IPO of Guinness. So Guinness, when it IPO'd in the late 19th century, went to a valuation that was crazy. It was like a $500 billion in today dollars valuation. And what did they do with all of that capital? They hired statisticians. So part of the story of data is one of the first usages of data in industry, and it was to make beer. So Guinness knew that somehow they had to put these data to work. They hired some of the best statisticians around, but they knew that it was trade secret. They knew that it was something that was going to be a huge moat between Guinness and whoever was the second most famous Irish beer company at the time. And so they wouldn't even let their statisticians publish under their own name. If you ever took a class where you heard about students, t-test or something like that, student was actually a real person named Gossett, but he wasn't allowed to publish on his own name. That's what a closely held trade secret it was, to have the methods of statistics. Not just the methods of statistics, but the data themselves, right? So the data that Guinness was making sense of wasn't data from a bunch of scientists that were somehow crowdsourced. It was data that Guinness had access to because they knew how to do the right experiments. So that may seem normal, right? Like we're used to companies that have data today. As I said, now data rules, right? You can go to the NASDAQ and see that all the top companies of the NASDAQ are companies that are putting data to work. But this is you should think about it as strange. And one of the things that's strange is they didn't have any computers. So Guinness was doing this with a bunch of pencil and paper, and nobody, if you said the word computer at the time, you were talking about a person that they hired to do mathematics. All of that changed about 75 years ago in World War II at Bletchley Park. So Bletchley Park is the home in the United Kingdom of the code-breaking effort during World War II. And at the beginning of World War II, September of 1939, Alan Turing shows up to do his part to try to help in the war. And code-breaking at the time was being done by people who were really good at crossword puzzles. There was no computers, right? Maybe they had access to a couple of special purpose hardware for simulating what a German encoding machine, but they definitely did not have what we think of today as special purpose computation. But it was realized during the course of World War II that having access to abundant data as well as computation for making sense of the data was a game changer. When I was young, we thought that physicists won World War II, but then as I got older, now I know that data scientists won World War II. It's a story that's often occult. It's a story untold, although of course you can read more about it in our book. So World War II changed the game. It made sense that you could make sense of data through a computer, and what began then was a couple of decades of people making sense of data hand in glove between states and private corporations. The scale of data was so big that it wasn't being done by individual governments. It was being done by governments, sometimes walking hand in glove with telecommunication companies in the United States, and later companies like IBM. IBM creates the IBM 701 and then the 704. These are originally used by the state and then put to work for corporations. Later, IBM publishes a paper in 1958 about the data deluge, and they proposed a new field called business intelligence. You may think that business intelligence, or BI, has been with us since the dawn of time, but in fact it was a 1958 innovation. And that was part of decades of people just gathering enough data that they could put it to work. Again, states as well as private companies. We think about it as normal today, but what we hope to do in the book is to make the present strange. That brings us to really modern times. Really modern times is companies so awash in data that they not only have engineering challenges to store it and to make sense of it, but they have to think through, just like Guinness did, how are you going to actually learn from those data? How do you build models of those data?
So by the early 2000s, companies were unquestionably deluged by data. And there were many tools, like business intelligence and other tools, for making sense of that. But it was such a powerful challenge that a company like Netflix thought there was worth putting big money behind competitions to bring together diverse people with all kinds of different approaches to data to try to figure out how they could use that data in better ways for profit, for science, and for enjoyment of movies. And you see here a diverse sort of people that brought different kinds of algorithms. But it was a key moment in a transformation that all of us are now familiar with, which is the transformation of what was called machine learning into what we now think of as AI. AI, for much of the 20th century, remarkably for us, was not about data. It was about trying to emulate the great chess players or a great mathematician or a logician and try to build a robot on that grounds. But what happens in the early part of this millennium is the recognition that the way to do this was rather through building very often quite complex models on the kinds of data that could be stored in the kinds of infrastructures that were built in the wake of the Second World War. So the Netflix attempted to crowdsource finding new ways to use data for profit. But this was both the promise of the accumulation of data, the demand for new kinds of analytic technologies, and certain dangers.
I can tell you personally, that prize, $1 million, was a lot of dollars for academics. So when they announced the Netflix prize in late 2007, I and many other academics were very excited, and it drew a lot of attention to academics to the idea that you could learn a lot from data, big data that was being distributed by an important company like Netflix. But there were a couple of lessons there about the way we create value with data. One is the interesting aspects of the Netflix prize. So Netflix gave away all these data and said to the academic community, do your best, try to see if you can beat our algorithm for predicting how much people are going to enjoy movies. So at the beginning of the Netflix prize, all the academics' attention was on machine learning and how we can put data to work for this fun problem that we all can understand. But near the end of the Netflix prize, there was a different academic literature, which was academics pointing out that you can take all of these data from the people rating different movies, and you could combine it with their IMDb discussions on how much they like movies, and actually figure out who were the people who were rating all those movies. So as we will hear, data is very valuable, but data that's generated from Guinness in their own experiments has some qualitative differences from data that are about people and data that were gathered from your customers. So another lesson of the Netflix prize, I would say, is part of how we create value together with data, particularly when it's the customer's data, involves a lot of care about the way we protect those data.
And so this brings up the concerns about privacy that surround us, that worry us, that are central to our concerns, whether are in academia, the corporate world, the world of intelligence. This is a conversation, though, that has been going on for a little while. We can take us back to the era of Watergate, a moment of deep suspicion about the nature of the US state and states around the world. Rumors of a federal centralized data repository caused an explosion of worries in the press and in Congress. And it led, in a surprising way, to a bipartisan movement, rare then and rare now, but a bipartisan movement concerns with privacy. And what's salient and important about this moment is that it depends fundamentally on a recognition that data is valuable, that it's revelatory, and it's more revelatory than people could expect, that there were going to be ways to learn from it that would surprise people. That's, of course, been a theme for a very long time in the study of data. So anytime someone says something is just metadata, our hackles go up because metadata is unbelievably revelatory. So this led to a major national conversation about privacy, danger to both individuals and corporations alike. The end product was actually a fairly narrow form of legislation that restricted the federal government and not other sorts of entities. But it was a transformative moment in thinking about how privacy interests would affect not just individuals, but would increasingly become incumbent upon corporations.
Excellent. So we realized that the set of all people who are dealing with data, which I was, young, but at the time in the 70s, people realized that protecting data was not just about how we make sure that we don't make sure that people don't steal our data, but protecting data was also an infrastructure concern. So when IBM's publishing papers proposing a new field of business intelligence, right, in part it's because IBM had done a lot of work to build infrastructure to store and make available and accessible and available and accurate all of the data. So you need to protect data not only from external concerns like adversarial interests, but also simply to protect data in the sense of how do you protect any sort of engineering that you've built and make sure that your infrastructure is going to be robust and reliable.
Yeah, and naturally, just as Guinness needed to protect its extremely expensive data about the performance of different varietals of barley, so too, of course, did firms need to protect their intellectual property in data they provided. But this was all the more important given that the protection of the privacy of their customers became a crucial aspect of the safekeeping of data. Now, as all of you know, and many of you have participated in, the cloud was both a solution but also a problem. Consumers and corporations alike found the cloud answers to questions of large-scale storage and questions of security. But consumers found they were resting on a cloud that didn't always have their privacy in mind. Indeed, many corporations that had a business model that pushed against that privacy. And corporations, likewise, were resting fundamentally on clouds that may be safekeeping their data, but was often often controlled, too often, by third parties who had interests in many ways distinct from those of the corporations whose data they were securing and storing.
I like that picture of corporations resting on clouds. Now,
Yeah.
So corporations were resting on clouds in part because they were the beneficiaries of the internet itself. So the internet was this vision from the early 70s, and in fact, in some ways from the late 60s, that people would have new ways of collaborating with each other. Originally, it drew on economic concerns that the government was building these supercomputers, and it shouldn't be the case that one supercomputer in our brain of champagne was only going to be used for those people. We should create some sort of network that allowed people to co-share this computer. Well, in fact, here we are with the cloud. After all, with the cloud, we are using the internet to share access to a bunch of computers. So we learned that part of how we create value from data and how we show that we value data is not just that we defend it from particular adversarial interests, but we build the right infrastructure to make sure that the data are available, accessible, accurate to all the reliable parties. We make sure that we protect the individual privacy when we are dealing with data that's not necessarily about barley, but about people and their individual usage of our product in that case. So all of those come together to the present day in which, as we said, firms that are running the NASDAQ, firms that at the top, are the firms that are run by data, and data is quite very much ruling. The other aspect, of course, that we're living in today is the role of artificial intelligence. As Matt said, artificial intelligence as an aspiration 75 years ago was the dream that we would learn it from rules. We would have mathematical models, but it's clear today that artificial intelligence is coming from the way we make sense of the world through data. We derive data value not only from putting it together in tables, but from looking at, for example, the progression of data. And that allows us to build models that not only tell us how the world is, but to predict how things will be in the future. If you'd like to know more about that, I hope you're going to get time to look at our book on the subject, How Data Happened. It itself grew out of a class we taught together at Columbia for a long time called Data, Past, Present, and Future, which brings us to today, where we'll be hearing a lot about the future of data. Thank you very much, Sam.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Matt and Chris, for that really insightful discussion. There's a ton more in their book that you all have a copy of, so enjoy the read. It was a great one. It is clear that data is not just a technical concept, but a powerful source that influences our society, economics, and unfortunately, probably politics. 2,000 years ago, when the Great Library of Alexandria was destroyed in a fire, it was believed that all of recorded history had been lost. But thankfully, there were copies of many of those books that had been stored throughout the libraries of the Middle East. And at Own Backup, we call that the world's first backup system. It's also great to hear that thousands of years prior, the Mesopotamians were also using data, and I certainly hope they had a backup system as well. But making sense of our world through data has been part of human evolution since the beginning. We've inherited thousands of years of data, from cave paintings to papyrus scrolls, and of course this has evolved to libraries, hard drives, and recently the cloud. And this includes the world's most advanced SaaS applications that help to power nearly every modern business on the planet. Data has become our most important asset and the backbone of all of our companies, including customer contacts, financial records, service orders, and so much more. Data really touches every aspect of our work, and this is why we believe having today's discussion is so important. Since Own Backup's inception, over 8 years ago, our primary goal has been to protect our customers' data. We've made it our mission to ensure the availability, security, compliance of their mission-critical data. What started as a conversation with a couple of guys in a coffee shop 10 kilometers north of Tel Aviv, Israel, has evolved today into a company of nearly 800 employees spanning 7 countries across the globe. We've diversified from a single product in a single ecosystem to a platform that spans multiple products across many SaaS ecosystems, including Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Microsoft. But what I'm most proud of is that our platform helps protect the data of over 6,000 customers across the globe, of every size and every industry in nearly every geography. And none of our success would be possible without the success of these 6,000 customers. And I would love for you to hear firsthand of how one of our customers is using the OwnBackup platform to transform their business. Let's hear from our friends at NASDAQ.
Welcome to NASDAQ.
Colleen Pascioni, AVP for Global Sales and Service Technology.
Hi, I'm Amy Zwyman, Director of Global Sales and Service Technology.
The role of Salesforce at NASDAQ has become so much more critical over the years. We continually expand in terms of what we're doing on the application, both for sales and service organizations, as well as integrations across many systems and added apps. It's more than just a simple contact management solution and sales pipeline. Data has become critical to everything that we do. We continually expand what we're capturing, how we're capturing it, and doing so much more in terms of analytics and insights into that data. It's really critical that we have a strong tool behind that to ensure that those services are not disrupted and that we can keep everything consistent for our users.
We're supporting users who have trust and confidence in Salesforce, and so therefore we have trust and confidence in OwnBackup, in that if we do need to restore data, whether it's metadata, whether it's customer data, we can do that, and we can do it quickly, and we know how to find it, and it shouldn't even be something that our users know about.
It's really critical as we look at data solutions that we consider that NASDAQ is going to continue to grow, as well as all of the applications that we're using. And with that, the data is going to continue to expand. As such, we need to consider whether or not we have the right solutions that can handle that expansion and grow with us. When looking for solutions in the data space, it's really important that we don't just look for basic functionality. We're looking for leaders in the space that have innovative ideas, not just in terms of backing up data, but looking how we can leverage these services to do so much more, gain insights, help our development processes, as well as connect that information to other areas in the organization. And it's important that we can trust those partners to be there for us when we really need them to be. I think it's important when you're looking at data that you have redundancy in terms of how we're backing that up, so that we have peace of mind and security, and we're not just keeping that information in one location.
In terms of backing up our data, it's really important that we also have accessibility, and we know how to get that data and how to get to certain pieces of the data as well. And that's not always easy to do with other systems.
Our data is our responsibility, and accessibility makes this more than just a backup. This really makes it our data so that we can do what we need to do with it, and we can help and leverage it for all of our operations.
Your system is only as good as the data that's in it as well, right? Yeah. Like, if we don't have accurate data, reliable data, data that our users really trust, they're not going to trust Salesforce, right? So it needs to be both of those things. It needs to be the functionality and the system that we're building and the data that's in there. And then, of course, our ability to support it and move quickly on the back end.
Please welcome to the stage Chief Technology Officer, Adrian Kunzel.
For a CTO, days like today are some of the very best. Today, I get to introduce to you a brand new product. And it's not just any product this time. This is the product that I joined OwnBackup 4 years ago to build. I'd like to introduce to you Discover. Our customers are sitting on a gold mine of data, the data that's in their backups. And we built Discover for customers like NASDAQ who understand just how valuable that data is. NASDAQ has been one of our first customers to experience Discover. And to help us put all of this into some form of perspective, I'd like to introduce you to someone who is shaping the future of data at NASDAQ. Please welcome to the stage Michael Davis, Senior Vice President of Corporate Platforms Technology at NASDAQ. Michael.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you join us today. Let's start by telling a bit about yourself and your role to the audience.
Sure, so I'm based in California. I brought all the wonderful sunshine and weather that everyone here is experiencing. I just wanted to get that out there. At NASDAQ, I've got responsibility for a pretty large engineering group. We build products. We don't focus on the stock market side of NASDAQ. I'm in a group called Corporate Platforms. So we have a governance solution suite of products. We have ESG products. We have tools that investors use, and also we support NASDAQ.com, the website. So busy, busy times at NASDAQ. Looking forward to this conversation around Discover also.
That's quite a lot to be dealing with. So we've been partners now for, I think, around about 2 years. I'd love to hear what you use OwnBackup for today.
Yep. So today we signed the deal back in 2019, and we started in 2020. The journey, oops, got my dates wrong. That would be 2021 we signed the deal. Yep. In 2022 we started actually using the product. That was a test just to make sure you were like paying attention. So back then it was really more of a regulatory compliance play. We had issues with Salesforce data, not being able to know where our data was, if it was being backed up securely. So then it was basically, you provide this service, we need the service. Salesforce doesn't do a really good job of providing the service. And that was the beginning of this partnership. But looking forward to, once again, talking about Discover and where we're at now.
Yeah, great. Before we go there, most of us, and I certainly did before we got talking, know NASDAQ as an exchange. But your role, I think, highlights just how much more you're doing with the data that you have there. So love to hear a little bit about that vision.
Yeah, so NASDAQ is over 50 years old. And that's a fun fact I just thought I would throw out to the audience here. And we have lots of data. So when you think NASDAQ, you should also think data. And right now at NASDAQ, the highest priority, I don't think I can come to work without hearing the words AI or data. So I'm spending a lot of time talking about and working on projects that are focused on AI and data. At the CEO level, there's actually a big initiative around understanding our client data. Salesforce is a big component of that initiative, as well as we have other large data enterprises. We're investing heavily in data, and obviously we want to be able to exploit that data, concatenate and use it in conjunction with AI capabilities. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and we'll just continue on this journey.
Brilliant. So as an OwnBackup customer, and you've talked a fair bit about the importance of AI and your AI strategy, what are some of the things today that still cause a struggle with the data and the AI application to it? And how do you think we can help you going forward?
Yeah, so very, very excited, first of all, about the Discover platform. We're in the early stages, obviously, we're piloting the platform. But before we talk about the platform, once again, at NASDAQ, AI is a big part of the conversation. We're thinking about the data that you have for us, and right now it's many, many years of Salesforce data, three years, almost 3 years of Salesforce data. Taking that data, using it in conjunction with large language models, and it's going to give us a lot of insight into customer decisions, behaviors, information that we can't get today. And the thing that I'm excited about the most as it relates to Discover is the team has validated that it takes 10 minutes to get access to, or less than 10 minutes, slightly less than 10 minutes, to get access to over 2+ years of information.
Wow.
The power of that is amazing. We're excited to see where you're going to take the technology, what the next step is in your evolution. But being in this pilot, we're here to work with you. We're going to get all the kinks out. But what we've seen so far, very, very exciting. And it will become part of our overall AI and data strategy.
That's very cool to hear. Well, we, we certainly love the partnership and really appreciate you being here today to share your perspective, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, take care. So the cloud first appeared when I was the CTO at JP Morgan Chase, too many years to mention at this point. And as with most new technologies, it was scary to large, sophisticated organizations. We'd hear every reason from, is it as secure as we need it to be, to, will it change my job, all cited as reasons why it should be avoided. Then I moved to Salesforce, in part to make the cloud a little less daunting. And on another day, much like this one, but a number of years ago now, customers were introduced to Shield, a new product that was designed to boost their confidence in the cloud. At Own Backup, our goal has always been to enable our customers to protect their data. And because of the way we focus on not just backup, but really, really fast recovery, we've also enabled them to ensure the health and the vitality and the precision of that data. And healthy data is the first step to doing more with it. But that isn't the only problem. Getting your data to a point where you can derive insights or learn from it is still much harder than it should be. It takes a team of skilled people with multiple tools to do it. And if you want to retain history, it gets even harder. And that's not just because it takes time to amass that history. And most native SaaS analytics capabilities don't do any of this for you. The data sitting in the backups, while it's dormant today, is full of potential. Backups are rich with historical context and can offer our customers a kind of organizational memory that they just can't get from their data anywhere else. And in today's highly competitive business environment, being able to learn from your past is absolutely vital. Your historical data is your strategic advantage. And that is what Discover is all about. Activating analytics, AI, and data portability. When it comes to analytics, Discover enables our customers to get instant access, you heard it from Michael, to time series data, so that, let's take an example, sales organizations can analyze historical pipeline trends and use that insight to deliver more the very next quarter. Wealth managers might want to track a key metric like growth in assets under management over time, even when the account balances are overwritten in the SaaS system every night. And when it comes to AI, the promise for improving business is incredible. But many find implementing AI pretty intimidating. First, you actually have to accumulate all of that data. Then you have to prepare it for model training. This is often manual and cumbersome. And finally, there is a question of quality. Incomplete or inaccurate data just doesn't work. It sabotages performance of those predictive models. Fully assembled, clean, historical data in Discover will enable retailers, perhaps, to better forecast demand and produce more accurate plans, and SaaS companies like us to predict churn based on historical patterns, reducing risk to revenue long before the customer ever raises an issue. And finally, because we use open standards and open APIs, the data becomes portable. Customers will be able to include all of this historic data and the insights and the learnings from it in other systems, enabling more people to see more data and hopefully make better business decisions off of it. It also happens to be independent of your SaaS provider, so if there's any problems there, Discover can also play a role in your business continuity plans. You've probably heard that data is likened to the new oil. And yes, I think it's clear from everything we've heard today that it is the lifeblood of business today. But like oil, it also needs to be refined. Organizations have so much of it today, and it's constantly growing. And few are actually able to turn that data into something that's really meaningful. And that is why we built Discover, to make it easy to work with data in a whole new way. Powered by the Own Data platform, Discover enables our customers to own and activate their data.
Awesome. Thank you, Adrian. Since we started the company, this was always where we wanted to go. We wanted to empower our customers to do more with their own data. And this really is a very exciting time for us. This is a day in history where we have new ways to solve big problems for our customers. I want to share one more thing with you today. We've learned how important data is and how it touches businesses in every way. We started this company with a very simple belief that no company operating in the cloud should ever lose data. However, today, we are so much more than a backup company. And we are so committed to this that we've actually changed the name of the company from Own Backup to Own Company.
The move to SaaS changed our world. It brought the promise of freedom, releasing us from the restraints of on-premise software. But this promise of freedom was all an illusion. When we gave SaaS providers ownership of our data, we gave them ownership of our knowledge. We're not in charge anymore. We're doing everything their way. Want to access your data? Pay per API call. Run analytics. Use ours. Switch to another provider? Good luck with that. The tools that were built to give us freedom, that were designed to drive our business forward, are the ones holding us back. Introducing Own. Own gives you back complete ownership over what is rightfully yours, your data. The Own Data platform unlocks your data across your SaaS platforms, empowering you to own it. Now that you finally own your own data, you're free to do everything on your own terms, giving you the power to do whatever you please, and the promise of SaaS finally fulfilled. It's their platform. It's your data. Own it.
Please welcome to the stage Chief Marketing Officer, Courtney Leclerc.
The promise of simplicity propelled SaaS into the mainstream. However, when we moved to SaaS, we lost something huge: ownership of our data. Since our company's inception, we have developed our products and services with an intrepid focus to complete the promise of SaaS. Wouldn't it be remarkable, if I don't fall, we could give the power of data right back into our customers' hands? Now, the Own platform makes owning your own data simple. It brings together everything vital across your SaaS platforms and protects your data with backup, recovery, security, archiving, and it even helps developers accelerate their work. And today, with Discover, unlocking even more ways to amplify your businesses. We transform what it means to own your data into an opportunity with boundless potential. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Own.
us for a reception. Thank you.